feel-good breakfast show.
Because we need a little grandiose entrance on a Monday morning. Most importantly, on Workers' Day. Yes, a public holiday for many, but yes, some are doing their duty today, and that is working on behalf of all of us. And we're here to keep our pledge to make your feel-good breakfast show a reality. And of course, we've got our news editor, Roi Simpson, who's going to try and make the news feel good this morning. At least he's going to put it in perspective for us. Roy, we love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Really, really do appreciate it. And as always, we need to know how you feel about these major issues and how they affect you. So please share your thoughts and your opinions, your insights. 063-408-8863. We've been talking about finding solutions to load shedding, so we're going to approach everything today from a solution perspective. All right, so we can try and be positive. But there is a lot going on to confuse us right now, and you're in one of the most... it feels like Groundhog Day, bro.
Dude, for sure. Can I just also say, on the topic of Workers' Day, the fact that we are working, is this really work?
No.
Is this really work? I mean, come on, we get to hang out with you guys.
And Roy.
And Roy. I mean, yeah.
And Roy's going, yeah, no, this is really work.
For sure. Now, I know it feels a bit like we've seen this in a movie before, because we have, but tomorrow, yet again, Johannesburg will vote for a new mayor. Now, the Mogale mayor was ousted just over a week ago, and recently there have been leadership changes in Tshwane and Ekurhuleni. So, Roy, just how many mayors have Johannesburg had?
Interesting way to start it.
Yeah.
Well, Tapelo Ahmad, of course, resigned last week. He was the fourth mayor since the local general elections, which would have been November of 2021. So when we get a new mayor... Look, two of those have been the same person, Mpho Phalatse. And there is a chance that tomorrow the fifth mayor would be Mpho again.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's about administration.
We'll call it an interim manager.
Well, yeah.
Reserve.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So the issue, of course, is continuity of administration. Because you'll start a project, so Mpho came in, we're going to spend 700 million rand on fixing load shedding, and people started gearing around that. They started drawing up plans, purchasing agreements, things like that. Bang, she's no longer mayor. That's no longer a priority. So all of that work just lies dormant and gets wasted potentially. And you have this every time you change administration. So tomorrow, to answer your question, we'd get the fifth mayor for Johannesburg. Ekurhuleni's had 4. Tshwane's had 3. Nelson Mandela Bay is on its 2nd, but that's just been really, really messy. So we've got the situation across all the metros where we need to find a solution to these unstable coalitions.
Because, and we can identify it within the political framework, yes, but it's a function. Yes. It's a job that speaks to a running, functional system that keeps stopping and halting. What is driving this uncertainty in that space? Is the job impossible? Is the politics making the waters too murky? What is driving this kind of instability in that space? Because these are pretty key positions for the running of the country.
Absolutely. I mean, you're looking at the economic powerhouse of the nation.
The function. And it's that functional kind of area where we need traction.
Absolutely. So it is the politics of it. There are very, very few instances. And remember, we're talking about the metros.
Yeah.
There are municipalities across the country where changes are happening on a regular basis as well. It's not the gig itself. It's the party seeking power. So it's all about, can we cobble together a coalition that steals the little one vote you had to make it a majority for you, and then our person can get the top job. So it's all the contest for power. There are very few instances where mayors are being removed because they are incompetent, because people really lack confidence in them. So you've got people like the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, coming out and saying, well, let's have rules for coalitions. It's interesting that the ANC should start taking coalitions so very seriously in the run-up to next year's national elections. But yeah, I mean, we have to find a solution. And I think we as citizens, we as a people need to realize we can actually have any kind of society we want.
Yeah.
We can write the rules for anything we think that's going to work. I mean, we invented, do you remember floor crossing? Where you could swap political parties halfway through your term.
Oh, can we bring that back? That was really exciting.
Well, potentially we can do this for coalitions for the first 2 years. You're stuck. It's not until death us do part, but until 2026.
Fiscal 25.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know. So some kind of rules for how these coalitions work together.
Completely.
It's viable, I suppose. It's possible, yeah.
I suppose as long as we take a functional aim, the reason why I can't move past this, I remember reading an article saying that it can take an organization up to 5 years to recover from losing one key personnel. So imagine what that's doing to the structures. How does that affect you if you live in one of these municipalities? How do you feel about the revolving door of managers coming in and out? Yes, we're not talking about the Premier League, we're talking about South African politics. So please let us know, but we will talk a little bit of Premier League and continue with those news headlines as well in just a moment. Stick around.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show on this Monday morning. And we are all about the news headlines this morning. Making news headlines is Zoe's boots as well. Look at that. Come on, Zoe.
So cozy, yeah. I can't wear open shoes on the show, so I've got to wear them boots.
You got to wear the boots.
Boots are made for walking.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, that news headline, it's came and gone, but it's good. It's going to be here all morning, though. But look, we are taking a look at some of the major news stories this morning and of the week as well. And our news editor, Roi Simpson, is back with us to help us understand the implications. And if the election of mayors is a movie stuck on repeat, the award for the longest running drama series must go to Eskom and load shedding. Like sand through the hourglass, so the power to cook meals runs through our hands. And look, we got to
on its own.
Yeah, it's a drama on its own. We got to start it with a kind of a light note. But yes, the ANC is taking Andre de Ruyter to court for defamation. So just firstly, for those who might not have been following, he's not in the country anymore.
No,
Are we speculating?
we're pretty sure he's out of the country. Even just looking at his Zoom crossing, it didn't look like sort of South African winter.
Check out you guys analyze things.
And there's an upcoming part of this court case. The ANC wants to put the boot in now. They can see that he's in a tight corner. He's made these allegations about senior members of the ANC, senior politicians being involved in corruption. But he hasn't produced any evidence. He hasn't even named names when it came to SCOPA, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. So they feel they've got him in a corner that he might not be able to get out of, because when he fulfilled his obligation under the Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act, man, for that you just need to go and I have a suspicion, and I've seen this and I've seen that. When you're talking about a defamation case, you need to be able to prove. You need to say, I said that because I know this.
Yeah.
So if he's unable to do that, and we know with corruption, it's sometimes really difficult to provide proof. So they feel they're going to take him to court, get him for defamation, and clear their own name. Wednesday, the court case is about interacting with someone who's not in the country for a court case. The understanding is that he's in Germany at the moment. And we always said that was the wise move for him.
Yeah. Do we know who is this person? Do we know?
Oh, who the minister? No, we don't. What we know is that he has spoken to ministers, so you can kind of start joining dots. Tomorrow, Scope is having a meeting. They're calling in Pravin Gordhan, and they're calling in the former security minister, Sidney Mufamadi, and they're going to try and grill them. There's no suggestion it's either of them, but the suggestion is they know who it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I also know that, from a safety point of view, he didn't want to mention, any names, for his and his family. So, but he did refer to the Hawks and that they know.
Exactly. So this is the thing. He says he's fulfilled his duties to report this matter, and there are people who know the answers. Go and ask them. It's their job. So that's where we're at. It's
going to be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. But I think that this court case it's just a PR exercise.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, do you think there's a case?
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. I think they might get him.
Okay.
But nothing will have changed.
No.
They won't have proven anything by proving that he can't prove what he wants to say. It's a complicated thought for a Monday morning.
Very complicated. Well, I feel like I'm going to add to that complicated mix. Roy, last week in the news, I read about the KwaZulu-Natal feeding scheme. So a lot of kids go to school, and some of them, that's the only meal they get is through these feeding schemes, and that whole feeding scheme collapsed. What do we know so far? Because my understanding was only one company received the entire tender.
So you're absolutely right about that. Zoe, it's worth about 2.1 billion rand. But you're looking at 2 million kids, and you're looking at feeding them for a year. So the individual amount per child per day really is quite small. It's less than 3 rand, I think. but the collective value, 2.1 billion. And what the KwaZulu-Natal Education Board, or Education Department rather, is saying is that they took the same option that Eastern Cape did and appointed one service provider. Because if that runs properly, that service provider then has all this money and all this capacity to negotiate for better prices, which should improve the quality of the produce, should improve everything about the system. The problem is this particular operator just doesn't seem to have been fit for purpose. They maintain that they have been politically sidelined, that people have stopped their trucks from delivering things. But I mean, you had deliveries of rotten food, you know, arriving at schools. You had non-delivery. Suddenly schools had to drive to depots to fetch this. And it's 2 million children who, as you say...
They rely on that.
They depend on it. That is their only daily guarantee of protein and sustenance. So since the Easter holidays, these kids haven't had access to it. And it's not clear whether there's corruption. It has the whiff of corruption. This guy's connected with funding ANC campaigns and things in the past. We don't know that. What we do know, and I can give you some good news on this at least, is that the department has basically said, everyone who's running the scheme, before we gave it to the wine company, just pick up where you left off. So that should mean that everything should kick in and the system should be where it's at. There's going to be a lot of fixing things post hoc, trying to find out was there corruption. So the SIU is involved. They're already looking into the tender, and there are questions around senior politicians who would have awarded it. But it looks like when kids go back to school tomorrow, they should have access to this nutrition program. So that's
some good news. I mean, the focus really should be on the kids here. I mean,
totally, yeah.
I mean, for a kid to go to school hungry and trying to learn, I mean, that's just not right.
No.
So let's hope. Thank you very much, Roy. We're going to be back with Roy for one more segment. And very proudly, South African.
Yeah.
Kirsten, yes, 8 months at sea alone and the winner of the State Around the World Golden Globe. I mean, look at that. It is an incredible story. We're going to dig into this in just a little bit. Stick around.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back as we connect with the world, yes, through that incredible individual, Roi Simpson. He's our guy connected to the news that's breaking across the world, and right now we are bringing it to you because it really does matter. We need to know what's going on in this crazy old world of ours. In one particular part of the world, a lot of news focus, which has to be positive in some sense because I think it's the forgotten corner of the earth that has seemed to be in the worst state for the longest time. We thought some progress had been made in the Sudan this week. We know the South African contingent, those that chose or want to be back in South Africa, which begs a few questions, but it feels like ceasefire is possibly over now and we are back in a mess. What is actually going on in Sudan right now?
It seems like the ceasefires have been only partially successful, that they're almost...
a notion.
Yeah, or a PR campaign of some kind. Remember, there's winning hearts and minds part to this as well as winning the war on the ground.
It's still political to an extent.
Absolutely, yeah. So the situation at the moment is that the internationals who are there have pretty much been spirited out of the country. There are not that many left who want to leave. So now you're in the situation where, in theory, there's a third ceasefire that's been started. But I mean, there are planes flying overhead shooting missiles into the city centre.
There is smoke rising all the time.
Absolutely. So Hemedti and Al-Burhan are very clearly properly at war. And I think the fear going forward, it's not a good news story in any measure, because with the departure of these international players, you get a lot of media attention disappears as well. A lot of international attention goes. And suddenly these guys are left to... Remember, they've both got like international criminal court issues around them, around human rights abuses, and they are now going to be left unwatched as such
to do exactly what they do.
To fight it out for power. So things not looking good, I'm afraid.
Yeah, you got to think about the people there as well. I mean, it's a dire situation, it really is. But we do want to finish off on a bit of a more positive note, and this is it. Back to home ground. Kirsten, we spoke about the surname, Noah Schaefer.
Noah Schaefer.
Noah Schaefer.
Yeah, that's how she pronounces it.
Yeah.
And she's given quite a few interviews for someone who is struggling to be with people, with crowds of people and talk.
But can you imagine?
8 months at sea alone, but she won, the first woman.
She did.
Which I think is fantastic.
It is. This is an amazing thing. The race started in 1968, and they use the same tech that they did there. So there's no GPS on board. There's none of these direction finders
It's the
or anything.
stars, baby.
There's a satellite phone on board that they do safety check-ins on. So, for example, one of the competitors from Finland, interestingly enough, their boat just sank in the middle of the ocean. So they had a life raft. She was the one who went and rescued this person.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So she's won this.
She might have been, look, the only person within like 1,000 nautical miles, but she still did it.
So she's done this, and she gave a lovely. She came into Le Sable d'Orléans. I forget how to pronounce it, but she came into the harbour in France, holding up the South African flag on Freedom Day on the 27th of April, and then in one of her things she said. And she's not a political person. She's not really a public person
Didn't
either.
do it for that. Yeah.
And she said she values the fact that she's come from South Africa, where women can do these things. So it was such a lovely moment. It was, you felt the emotion welling up as she came in first, the first woman to ever win a solo around the world yacht race, 48,000 kilometers.
I've got to ask you, in this, out of 100 stories that you get to focus on that's like this, how important is it to hear stories like this? Not just for you, obviously, in your ecosystem, but for the world to have this on front pages.
It's critical. This issue of gender equity, gender equality, it's a fundamental part of the society we're trying to build. And everything that says, man, you are making progress, and that the progress is going to lead to joyous moments, to things that we can celebrate, where we can go, look, this is doable. She can beat all the guys. And then you can celebrate that individual regardless of their gender. That's so important. Those symbols really matter. So this is so cool.
It is. And to see people doing stuff that no one has ever been able to do before in this way means that we can all do that. We can all go out and still do things that no human has been able to achieve before. But you've got to be a South African woman to achieve it. Okay, that's just the bottom line. We are so unbelievably proud. Roy, thank you so much
for
joining us on Workers' Day. Hopefully you are finding inspiration today. We've still got 2.5 hours to get you there.